Verified department records. Genuine field evidence. Unbiased justice. Welcome to Bodycam Incident Reports.
Well, stop right there. This section is VIP only. Turn around.
We're staying in the presidential villa. I'm scanning my card.
You don't look like the people on my list. Show me real ID. Now.
You haven't asked our names, and you're not touching my family.
Back up, right now, or this gets ugly.
The gentle crash of turquoise waves against the pristine white sand usually provides the soundtrack for the Paradise Cove Resort and Spa. It is a place of exclusive luxury, a sanctuary where the wealthy come to escape the noise of the world. But at 7:45 p.m. on a balmy Friday evening, that tranquility was shattered by the harsh guttural shouting of authority gone wrong. What was supposed to be a celebratory dinner for a loving family turned into a viral sensation that would expose the dark underbelly of racial profiling in luxury spaces, destroy a veteran officer's career, and force a multi-billion-dollar hospitality chain to reckon with its own complicity. The security footage and cell phone videos captured everything, and what they revealed would ignite a firestorm across social media, proving that no amount of money, success, or status can shield you from prejudice when someone with a badge decides you don't belong. Before we unpack this harrowing story, let me know in the comments if you've ever felt unwelcome in a place you paid to be, and if you haven't already smashed that subscribe button, because this is a story of justice that you need to hear to believe. The family at the center of this hurricane was the Richardsons. There was Marcus, a 45-year-old neurosurgeon known for his steady hands and calm demeanor under pressure. His wife Elena was a corporate attorney who had spent the last decade fighting for environmental regulations. Their daughter Maya was a brilliant 17-year-old track star with a scholarship to Stanford already lined up. And then there was 12-year-old Leo, a quiet, sensitive boy who loved marine biology and had spent the entire trip memorizing the names of tropical fish. They were the picture of the American dream. They worked incredibly hard, contributed to their community, and raised their children to be kind, respectful, and ambitious. Marcus spent his free time running a free clinic in the city. Elena mentored young law students from underprivileged backgrounds. Maya volunteered at the animal shelter, and Leo just wanted to save the coral reefs. Nothing about them suggested threat or criminal. They were simply a successful black family looking to enjoy the fruits of their labor. That Friday was meant to be the highlight of their vacation. It was Marcus and Elena's 20th wedding anniversary. They had booked the resort's most exclusive experience, a private sunset dinner at the Cliffside Lanai, a restricted VIP section of the resort accessible only to guests staying in the presidential villas. The week had been magical so far. They had snorkeled in the crystal-clear waters, taken a helicopter tour of the island, and simply enjoyed being together without the pressures of their high-stakes careers. The day had been filled with joy. Marcus and Leo had gone deep-sea fishing in the morning, catching a marlin that Leo insisted they release back into the ocean. Elena and Maya had spent the afternoon at the spa bonding over facials and talking about Maya's upcoming move to college. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, painting the sky in strokes of violet and burning orange, the family dressed for dinner. Marcus wore a crisp linen suit. Elena looked stunning in an emerald evening gown, and the kids were dressed in their Sunday best. They looked like royalty. They left their villa around 7:30 p.m., walking along the manicured path lined with tiki torches. The air smelled of hibiscus and sea salt. The resort was buzzing with the gentle energy of happy vacationers. Guests were sipping cocktails by the infinity pool, and a jazz band was playing softly in the distance. Everything felt perfect. They approached the gated entrance to the Cliffside Lanai. This area was separated from the main resort by a waist-high wrought iron gate and a lush hedge of bougainvillea. It was the inner sanctum of the resort, a place for the ultra-wealthy to dine in absolute privacy. Standing guard near the entrance was Deputy Frank Bull Miller. Miller wasn't standard resort security. He was a 15-year veteran of the local sheriff's department who worked off-duty security details for the resort. At 50 years old, with a thick neck and a buzz cut, Miller carried himself with an air of absolute authority. He viewed the island not as a tourist destination, but as his backyard, and he viewed the resort as a fortress he was paid to protect from riffraff. Miller had a history of complaints, excessive force during traffic stops, aggressive language with minority tourists, but in a small town where the good old boy network ran deep, those complaints always seemed to vanish. Miller was leaning against a pillar, sipping an iced tea, watching the guests flow by. He nodded respectfully to an older white couple who swiped their key card and entered the lanai. He smiled at a group of young European tech millionaires who walked in laughing. But when his eyes locked onto the Richardsons, his demeanor shifted instantly. His eyes narrowed. His posture stiffened. He set his iced tea down on the podium with a deliberate thud. The Richardsons, chatting happily about the fish Leo had seen that morning, didn't notice the change in the atmosphere. Marcus approached the electronic reader at the gate and reached into his pocket for his platinum keycard. "Hold it right there," Miller's voice boomed, cutting through the ambient jazz music like a gunshot. Marcus paused, card in hand, and offered a polite smile. "Good evening, officer. We're just heading in for our anniversary dinner." Miller didn't smile back. He stepped in front of the gate, physically blocking the sensor. He looked the family up and down with a sneer of contempt, his hand resting casually, too casually, near the taser on his belt. "This area is for VIP guests only. The public buffet is back near the main lobby." The insult was subtle but sharp. Elena felt her spine stiffen. "We are aware of where the buffet is," she said, her voice cool and professional, the tone she used when cross-examining a hostile witness. "We are staying in the presidential villa. We have a reservation at the lanai." "Is that so?" Miller chuckled, a sound devoid of humor. "Let me see some ID, and I don't mean the room key. I want to see driver's licenses for the adults." Marcus sighed. He knew this dance. Every black man in America knows this dance, regardless of how many degrees he has or how much his suit costs. He signaled for Elena to stay calm. "Officer, I don't have my wallet on me. I'm in a resort. My room key acts as my ID and payment. If you step aside, I can scan it and the system will verify our reservation." "I'm not stepping anywhere." Miller stepped closer, invading Marcus's personal space. "We've had a lot of issues lately with people sneaking in here using stolen cards or slipping in behind real guests. You folks don't look like the names on my list." "You haven't even asked for our names." Maya spoke up, her voice trembling slightly, but filled with teenage defiance. "Quiet, Missy," Miller snapped, pointing a finger at her. "Adults are talking." "My name is Dr. Marcus Richardson," Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming firmer. "This is my wife, Elena. We are guests. Now are you going to let us pass, or do I need to call the general manager?" That was the trigger. To a man like Miller, a request to speak to a manager wasn't a consumer right. It was a challenge to his authority, and Miller did not handle challenges well. "You're not calling anyone," Miller growled. "You're trespassing. I gave you a direct order to identify yourself, and you refused. Now you're acting belligerent." "Belligerent?" Elena stepped forward, her lawyer instincts kicking in. "We are standing perfectly still. We are speaking calmly. You are the one raising your voice. You are the one escalating this." Miller's face turned a shade of angry red. He wasn't used to people talking back, especially not people who looked like them. He unclipped his radio. "Dispatch, I've got a code 4 at the Cliffside Gate. 4 subjects refusing to comply, possible trespassers. Send backup." The phrase, "refusing to comply," hung in the humid air. It was a dangerous phrase. It was the kind of phrase that justified tackles, tasers, and worse. By now, other guests had stopped to watch. A hush fell over the nearby walkway. People peered over their cocktails. Some looked annoyed at the disturbance, others looked concerned. "Sir," Marcus said, raising his hand slowly to show he was unarmed, a reflex taught to him by his father and passed down to his son. "There is no need for backup. Just look at the reservation list on your podium." "Back up!" Miller shouted, his hand moving to his baton. "Get back from the gate!" It was at this moment that Dante the Richardson's 17-year-old son, who I earlier introduced as Maya. My apologies. Let's correct that Maya is the daughter. Leo is the son. Let's stick to the family structure. Maya, 17, and Leo, 12. Maya, the 17-year-old track star, pulled out her phone. She didn't make a show of it. She just held it against her chest camera lens facing out and hit record. "I'm recording this?" Maya announced, her voice shaking but clear. "I am recording everything you are doing." Miller's eyes darted to the phone. "Put that phone away. You don't have my permission to film me." "I don't need it," Maya shot back. "We're in a public space. You're a public official." Miller lunged. He didn't think, he just reacted. He reached over the small gap between them to snatch the phone. Marcus, seeing a large man lunge at his teenage daughter, instinctively stepped in between them, putting his hand on Miller's chest to push him back. "Don't you touch her!" Marcus shouted. That was all Miller needed. "Assault on an officer!" he screamed. In a blur of motion, Miller grabbed Marcus by the lapels of his expensive linen suit and slammed him against the stone pillar of the gate. Leo screamed. Elena rushed forward, grabbing Miller's arm. "Stop it! He's a doctor! You're hurting him! Ah!" Miller spun around and shoved Elena backward. She stumbled, her high heels catching on the cobblestones, and she fell hard onto the ground. "Mom!" Leo cried out, rushing to her side. The scene was chaotic. Miller had Marcus pinned, twisting his arm behind his back in a painful compliance hold. Marcus, realizing that any resistance could be fatal, went limp, shouting, "I am not resisting, I am complying." "Stop fighting me!" Miller yelled, playing to the crowd and the cameras he knew were watching, creating a false narrative in real time. It was then that the cavalry arrived, but not the kind Miller expected. Sarah Jenkins, the resort's guest experience manager, had been doing her rounds nearby when she heard the commotion. Sarah was a petite woman in her 30s, known for her bubbly personality, but she ran her resort like a Navy ship. She saw Dr. Richardson, a Diamond Elite member she had personally checked in, being manhandled by the security detail. She saw Mrs. Richardson on the ground. She saw the terrified children. Sarah didn't run, she sprinted. "Officer Miller, stop this immediately!" Sarah screamed, her voice piercing the tension. Miller, breathing heavily, looked over his shoulder. "Stay back, Sarah. These people attacked me. They're trespassing." "Trespassing?" Sarah looked at him like he had lost his mind. "That is Dr. Marcus Richardson. They are staying in the presidential villa. I checked them in myself yesterday. Release him right now." Miller hesitated. The narrative he was building was crumbling. He refused to show ID. He pushed me." "I pushed you because you lunged at my daughter," Marcus yelled, his face pressed against the stone. By this time, the backup Miller had called arrived. 2 resort security guards and another sheriff's deputy, Officer Banks, pulled up in a golf cart. Officer Banks was younger, black, and had known Miller for 2 years. He took one look at the scene, the wealthy family, the weeping mother, the manager screaming, and knew exactly what was happening. "Miller, let him go," Banks said, his voice low and dangerous. He walked up and physically peeled Miller's hands off Marcus. Marcus stumbled forward, straightening his suit, wincing in pain. He didn't look at Miller. He went straight to Elena, helping her up from the ground. "Are you okay? Did you hit your head?" "I'm fine," Elena said, brushing dirt off her gown, her eyes burning with a cold fury that was more terrifying than any scream. She turned to Miller. "You have made a very, very big mistake." Miller was now backpedaling, but his arrogance wouldn't let him fold completely. "I was doing my job. They fit the description of a group we were warned about. They were aggressive." "What description?" Sarah, the manager, demanded, stepping into Miller's face. "The description of a family eating dinner. Give me your badge number, now." "I don't answer to hotel staff," Miller scoffed. "No," a deep voice came from the crowd, "but you answer to me." The crowd parted. Standing there was Sheriff Tom Henderson. He was vacationing at the resort himself, having dinner at the main restaurant when he heard the radio chatter. Henderson was an old-school lawman, but he was a politician, and he knew a disaster when he saw one. He looked at the Richardsons' distinguished, wealthy, clearly victims. He looked at Miller, sweaty, red-faced, defensive. "Sheriff," Miller started, "these people." "Shut up, Frank," Henderson said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. Henderson walked over to Marcus. "Sir, I am Sheriff Henderson. I want to apologize for my deputy's behavior. Are you injured? Do you need medical attention?" "My wife was shoved to the ground," Marcus said, his voice shaking with suppressed rage. "My children are traumatized, and I have been assaulted. We don't need a medic. We need a lawyer. I am a lawyer, Elena said, stepping forward. She held up her phone. And my daughter has been recording for the last 5 minutes. Would you like to see the video where your deputy lunges at a minor? Miller's face drained of color. He looked around. It wasn't just Maya recording. At least a dozen guests had their phones out. The European tech millionaires were filming. The older couple was filming. The staff was watching. Frank, the sheriff turned to Miller. Give me your badge and your gun. Sheriff, come on, you can't be serious. I was protecting the VIP area. They refused to identify. You profiled a family. Henderson cut him off, his voice rising. You escalated a non-situation. You put your hands on a guest. And you embarrassed this department. Badge. Gun. Now. Miller looked at his boss, then at the crowd. He saw the disgust on their faces. He saw the way the resort manager was looking at him like he was garbage. Slowly, with shaking hands, he unbuckled his gun belt and handed it over. He placed his badge in the sheriff's hand. Get off the property, Sarah the manager hissed. You are banned from Paradise Cove. If you set foot here again, you will be arrested for trespassing. Miller tried to muster some dignity, but there was none left to find. He walked away alone, past the silent crowd into the darkness of the parking lot. But the story didn't end there. The Richardsons did not have their dinner. They went back to their villa, ordered room service, and held each other. They cried. They talked. They processed the humiliation of being stripped of their dignity in front of strangers. But then they went to work. Maya uploaded the video to TikTok before midnight. She didn't add music. She didn't add fancy filters. She just captioned it. This is what happens when you're black in a luxury resort. My dad is a surgeon. My mom is a lawyer. It didn't matter. By morning, the video had 2 million views. By noon, it was trending #1 worldwide. The internet detectives went to work. They found Miller's history of complaints. They found photos of him on Facebook posting racist memes. They found the sheriff's department's budget records. The fallout was nuclear. The Paradise Cove Resort and Spa's corporate stock dipped 15% in 2 days. To their credit, they didn't try to hide. The CEO flew to the island personally to apologize to the Richardsons. He fired the security contracting firm that hired Miller. He announced a $5 million donation to the NAACP and instituted mandatory bias training for all staff at all 500 of their global properties. Sheriff Henderson, realizing his re-election was in jeopardy, fired Miller formally 3 days later. But that wasn't enough for Elena. She filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against Miller personally and the county sheriff's department. The investigation revealed that Miller had stopped black guests 15 times more often than white guests at that gate. It revealed a culture of silence within the department that allowed him to operate unchecked. 6 months later, the county settled for $3.5 million. It was one of the largest settlements for a non-lethal police misconduct case in state history. Miller lost his pension. He lost his career. He was charged with misdemeanor assault and battery. He avoided jail time through a plea deal, but he would never carry a badge or a gun again. He ended up working alone in a warehouse miles away from the public he deemed himself superior to. The Richardsons used the settlement money to start the Leo Richardson Ocean Initiative, a foundation dedicated to helping inner-city youth get involved in marine biology and environmental science. 1 year later, the family returned to the same island. Not to the same resort, they couldn't bring themselves to go back there, but to a different one down the coast. They stood on the beach watching the sunset. You know, Marcus said, putting his arm around Leo. He wanted us to feel like we didn't belong. He wanted us to feel small. He failed, Leo said, watching the waves. Yeah, Maya added, holding up her phone to take a selfie with her family. He definitely failed. The lesson of that night at the Cliffside Lanai wasn't just about racism. It was about the fragility of power when it is misused. Officer Miller thought his badge gave him the right to judge who belonged and who didn't. He thought his authority was absolute, but he forgot that true authority comes from respect from service and from justice. When you try to use power to demean others, you don't prove their inferiority. You only prove your own insecurity. And in a world where every pocket holds a camera, the truth has a way of coming out. The lights may be bright and the resorts may be exclusive, But dignity is a right that belongs to everyone, and it is not something that can be checked at the gate.
This concludes today's report. To access more official footage, please like and subscribe. Thank you for choosing Bodycam Incident Reports.